40 years ago tomorrow, June 5th, 1981, the Centers for Disease Control recognized the first 5 cases of the disease that would come to be known as AIDS. According to the United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS, since the start of the epidemic, AIDS-related illnesses have claimed the lives of nearly 35 million people globally, and nearly 38 million were living with it in 2010. That includes 1.2 million Americans. Joining me now is Phil Wilson, founder of the Black AIDS Institute. He was diagnosed with HIV in the early days of the pandemic and lost a partner to AIDS as well. Mr. Wilson, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you joining the show. And I want to read to you a little bit of what you wrote in an article for NBC back in 2016. This is upon your 60th birthday. I never usually give people's age, but it was in your article. So don't get mad at me for that. But here's what you wrote. I've lived with HIV for most of my life. Never expected to even make it to 30, let alone to 60. Wow. Looking at that now, talk a little bit about your experience when you were diagnosed, how people around you reacted. Talk a little bit about you.
Well, thanks for having me on, Joy. And it's okay to talk about my age. You know, no one thought that I was going to be 30, and I'm now 65. When I was diagnosed, my doctor said, you have 6 months. Get your affairs in order. Well, it turns out that he was a little wrong. But it was devastating to find out that I was HIV positive. I was actually infected in 1980, so I've lived with HIV my entire adult life. In 1986, when I finally was diagnosed, it really felt like the world was going to end. Already, so many of my friends were sick, dying, or dead. And so my immediate reaction was, like the doctor said, I was going to be dead. And I decided that if I was going to be dead in 6 months, that I better get busy. And I just kept on being busy, you know, because the dying was going to take care of itself. I needed to focus on the living.
Well, and I can remember, you know, I was coming out and being a teenager in that period, or, you know, I think this started when I was in junior high school, and you didn't know anything about it. There wasn't a lot of talk by the government, by the Reagan administration. It was this sort of invisible thing until like Eazy-E and Magic Johnson, I think, for a lot of younger people, you know, or Ryan White and all of these other cases. But that wasn't about the gay community, right? It was sort of, other than that, just we in the, you know, non-LGBT community, you don't have to worry about that. Did it feel isolating to not have your government seem to care?
Absolutely. And the price was severe for all of us. You know, one of the things that we realized in the gay community is that they were not going to be sending the lifeboats for us. That if we were going to be saved, we were going to have to do the saving. And the reason why those famous people, those people that the proper people got sick and died, is because they didn't care. You know, Eazy-E wouldn't have gotten sick. Magic Johnson wouldn't have gotten infected. Elizabeth Glazer wouldn't have died. You know, all of those quote unquote right people wouldn't have gotten sick if they cared about us. You know, I grew up in the row houses in Chicago. And one of the things we learned early on, if your neighbor's house is on fire, you better pull out the water, because in 2 minutes, your house is going to be on fire. And so if our government had cared about us in the beginning, if our government had cared about gay men, you know, in the beginning, we wouldn't have the pandemic that we ended up having. And even that was mischaracterized, because the epidemic was never about only white gay men. From the very, very beginning, Black and other people of color were disproportionately impacted.
And it's still the case. I mean, my great producers put together some of these statistics, and they're really telling about our society. In 2019, gay men accounted for 69% of new diagnoses. In 2019, African Americans represented 13% of the population, but 44% of new HIV diagnoses. In 2019, Hispanics, Latinx people, 18% of the population, 30% of new diagnoses. This is still primarily impacting people of color.
Absolutely. And it's what happens when, you know, you marginalize folks, Joy. That, you know, HIV and AIDS was primarily a disease of poor people, of Black people, of brown people, of disenfranchised people. We're now at 40 years of this pandemic. We now see a light at the end of the tunnel of the next pandemic. And the lessons that we should have learned with HIV and AIDS, we did not learn. And we repeated those same issues as we deal with COVID-19.
And one of my producers made a really great point, who's very young. And, you know, for young, you know, gay men and women today, the existence of a thing called PrEP, right, has like changed the world, that there is this drug that will prolong life and allow you to have a life without constant terror. But there's, I know, also some price issues and cost issues. You still got to have health care, right? And so we know the South is where we're seeing disproportionate number of cases because not a lot of folks have health care. They didn't take the Medicaid expansion. How has sort of our health care debate sort of impacted this as well?
Well, it's kind of connected to the definition of infrastructure. We know there's a debate going on somewhere else on that. Well, so a few pills for some people that work some of the time does not a cure make. No, so it's not enough just to have the medications. You have to have access to the doctors. You have to have proximity to the doctors. You have to have access to the information. You have to trust the messenger. No, there's all these things that are involved in people actually being able to utilize care and treatment. So today, even though we have PrEP, we have better treatments, we still don't have access because we still don't care about the people who are most impacted.
Let's talk very quickly. I don't have a ton of time with you left, but Billy Porter, you gave a very emotional interview to my friend Tamron Hall and talked about his 2007 diagnosis. He'd also had financial issues and all sorts of stuff coming down upon him. But his program, Pose, how has that changed the way that people talk about that era? And how have it changed the way people talk about, just gay men, about the community, about the culture?
Well, the thing that's so important and phenomenal about Pose is that it speaks to the lie that people of color were not impacted. Now, it makes it clear that people of color were involved in the pandemic, impacted by the pandemic, and was a part of the fight to end the epidemic from the very, very beginning. Yeah. And that's an important lesson, particularly as we look at the 40th anniversary. I'm involved in the building of an AIDS monument in Los Angeles. And we are focused on making sure that all the stories are told, no matter who you are, no matter where you were, no matter where the intersection was.
And I know that you lost your partner, Chris Brownlee. We're going to show a picture of him very quickly. Tell us about him.
Well, Chris and I met in 1980. He truly was an amazing person. He was an activist. He really taught me the importance of speaking up and speaking out and covering and being concerned about the world.
I think we have lost. Hopefully we did not lose your audio, but I think we have. Phil Wilson, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you. God bless.